Nose art on military aircraft began during the First World War and became wildly popular during World War II. We all know the images of the P-40 Warhawk and its iconic shark mouth, or the image of an attractive woman, sometimes a wife or girlfriend, or a famous celebrity, painted on the nose of a B-17 or a B-25. The art was a way to distinguish planes, create group identity, and help the crew bond with their aircraft. But one thing that is striking about the nose art used during the Second World War is that for the most part, it was only the Army Air Forces that allowed it. The practice was generally banned by the Navy. With the exception of some Marine Corps units, the Navy just didn't allow it. Now, if you dig deep enough, you will find times where Navy pilots did get away with painting nose art on their aircraft, but those instances are few and far between. That is, with one notable exception. Navy Squadron VF-27 flew the F6F Hellcat during World War II. The squadron was formed on 22 April 1942 in Norfolk, Virginia. It found itself during the early part of 1944 in Maui, Hawaii, training prior to their deployment to fight the Japanese. While in Hawaii, 3 of the squadron's pilots designed nose art that was no doubt inspired by the famous shark mouth of the P-40 Warhawk. It was known as the cat mouth and featured a cat's eyes and mouth with sharp fangs dripping blood. It was considered a radical departure from the norm, considering the Navy's policy on the matter. But fighter pilots tend to be a little bit on the rebellious side.
Rebellious?
VF-27 was assigned to the USS Princeton, and on 29 May 1944, the squadron's 24 Hellcats, now adorned with a cat-mouth nose art, embarked aboard the light carrier. Little did the men aboard know that they were soon to take part in one of the most spectacular and successful light carrier cruises of World War II. And despite being in violation of Navy regulations, the squadron's commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Ernest Wood, let the irregularity slide. This was war after all, and there are more important things to worry about. On 11 and 12 June of 1944, the men of VF-27 would get their first taste of combat in the skies over Saipan and Tinian. A week later, the Cat-Mouth Hellcats took part in the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot and claimed 30 kills against Japanese aircraft. On their way to becoming aces, Bill Lamb, Dick Stambuk, and Gordon Stanley would each shoot down 4 enemy aircraft. But not all things came up roses. Lieutenant Commander Wood was lost during the fighting. He was replaced by Lieutenant Commander Fred Barcher. On 21 September, Lieutenant Commander Barcher led the men of VF-27 against the Japanese over Manila. The squadron would claim 38 more victories. And in mid-October, the squadron conducted strikes against Formosa, which is also known as Taiwan. Then on 24 October, the Princeton, which was affectionately known as Sweet Pea, was in the Leyte Gulf as part of Task Force 38.3. The battle that ensued is considered by most as the largest naval battle in history. During the fighting, VF-27 destroyed 36 more Japanese aircraft, and 4 of the squadron's pilots would become aces. While 9 Hellcats were airborne, the Princeton came under attack. A lone Yashuka D-4Y Susei, also known as a Judy, appeared out of the clouds and dropped a bomb onto the flight deck of the Princeton. On the deck at the time were fueled and armed Grumman TBF Avengers. The result was multiple explosions which set the ship on fire. But after 7 hours of fighting to extinguish the fire and stop the flow of water into the ship, the decision to abandon her was given, and she was scuttled by torpedoes from American subs. The USS Princeton would be the only light U.S. carrier lost during the war. The 9 Hellcats that were airborne during the attack on the Princeton were forced to land on other carriers in the task force. One of those was the USS Essex, commanded by Admiral Frederick Carl Sherman. And when he saw the cat-mouth nose art on the Hellcats, he became so upset that he ordered the planes to be painted over during the night. So to put this in perspective, during a fierce battle where a ship is lost along with the lives of some of her crew, the Admiral had nothing better to worry about than some benign artwork on a few aircraft. But he was not alone. Soon other commanders would take a similar stance and order the remainder of the Cottonmouth-clad Hellcats to be repainted. And after 6 months of non-compliance with Navy regulations, the Hellcats of VF-27 were once again conforming. The legendary artwork of the Hellcats of VF-27 was now banned.
That's so sad.
The squadron would finish out the war serving aboard the USS Independence. While the men of VF-27 are famous for the artwork on their aircraft, it's only half the story. During their time in service, the squadron would rack up 136 aerial victories and destroy another 64 aircraft on the ground. The squadron would produce 10 aces, with Lieutenant Carl A. Brown scoring the most kills with 10.5. VF-27 was the most successful light carrier air group of World War II. Sadly, 7 pilots would pay the ultimate sacrifice. The legend of the Cottonmouth nose art continues to live on today. It can be seen on Hellcats flying demonstrations, on Hellcats in museums, and in model kits. And despite being banned after only 6 months, it's one of the most famous nose art paint schemes ever. And it adorned aircraft of one of the most successful fighter squadrons in the history of warfare. And similar to the men of VF-27, the men who flew the F4U Corsair with Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 214, also known as the Black Sheep Squadron, had a very impressive record over a very short period of time. They were led by Colonel Gregory "Pappy" Boyington. To learn more about this legendary squadron of Marine Corps aviators and their legendary commander, click the screen now. And until next time, I'm Dennis Gill for Revealing History.